I got what you want, I got what you want, got what you need. Can I get another shot? Yes, you can. This time we'll make it hot. See you in Rochelle. What's up, y'all? Y'all know today is the reveal of the Pattern Hackathon hosted by our girl, Kris from Unsocial. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys the entire complete behind the scenes as well as a complete sew along for what I created. So if that's some content you would like to see, please continue to watch. Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video I could finally revealed the pattern. I already talked about the fabric. I already showed you guys the hack. So now it's time for me to show y'all the sew along to what my partner C from We See Style and myself created for the Pattern Hackathon. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. Hello, Ciao, Guten, Aloha, Hola, Konnichiwa, Gwaan, Sabonani, Shalom, Bonjour, Terve. If you are returning, you guys know what to do. Quick snack, something to drink. Grab the notebook to take some notes. Okay, so without further ado, to keep this short, sweet, give you all the deets and the news that you can use on this video and get you to the sew along, let's go ahead and talk about it. All right, welcome to another sew along as part of hashtag Pattern Hackathon. This one, we are going to be doing view A on this pattern, Butterick 7001. Now I have the PDF, I have glued it together. I have done, there's no need to size up because it's kind of oversized. So I did not need to size it up. Now for this one, I cut a size 16 for this one. Now, like I said, we're doing view A, which is kind of like a Mrs. Jacket. This one, you're only going to need 5 pattern pieces. That's pattern piece 1 through 5, which I'll go over here shortly. It's only 14 instructions to do this entire jacket. So a quick sew once again. So let's go ahead and get into this pattern. One thing I want to mention is let's talk about the sewing toolkit. Now, I have a complete video on the sewing toolkit. I'm going to link to it in the description box below. Just make sure that with any of my videos, you look at the toolkit or you just write down. I'm going to put up the clip of the basic items that you're going to need for your sewing toolkit. Now, in terms of notions for view A, you're not going to need any notions in order to complete this jacket. So it's just thread. That's it. Just your fabric and thread. So now that I talked about the sewing toolkit, the notions you're going to need, which is nothing, and introduce the pattern to you, let's go ahead and talk about the pattern pieces you will need in order to get started. Let's go ahead and do that now. So let's go ahead and get into the pattern pieces that we need in order to construct this jacket. So first pattern piece is pattern piece number 1, which is your front. You need to cut 2 of fabric. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 2, the back of your jacket. You need to cut 2 of fabric. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 3, the front bend. You need to cut 4 of fabric and interface 2. So I have 2 of them interfaced as well, okay? Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 4, which is the back bend. You need to cut 2 unfolded fabric and also interface 1 unfolded fabric. And the last pattern piece that you're going to need is pattern piece number 5, the sleeve. You need to cut 2 of fabric. Those are all the pattern pieces that you're going to need in order to construct this jacket. So let's go ahead and get started with the sew along, starting with the front and back pattern piece. So grab pattern piece number 1 and 2 now. All right, so go ahead and grab pattern piece number 1, which is your front. And what you're going to do is stitch the front area of your jacket. So what you're going to do is now it's no specific area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here towards the shoulder. I'm going to use about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can use a 1/2 inch if you choose to. I'm going to start right here and then stay stitch all the way down to the notch right here. All right. You do not have to back stitch because you are stay stitching but just go ahead and do that for both of your fronts. After you do that, you need to go ahead and stay stitch around the neck area of pattern piece number 2, which is the back. What you're going to do is start at the shoulders and then stay stitch all the way to the back of the center back. All right, so go ahead and stay stitched now. After you stay stitched both your front and your back, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and pin up the center back, and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're gonna back stitch at the beginning and at the end. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to make sure that I'm gonna pin it, but I'm gonna also stay stitch. So I'm gonna stay stitch the front, stay stitch the back, but I'm also going to pin. I'm just gonna leave this top portion undone so I'm able to stay stitch that area, all right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and pin the center back. This is, once again, this is pattern piece number 2. And I'm just gonna pin at the center back all the way down. So go ahead and pin all the way down the center back now. Now that I have the center back pin, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end and sew your seam allowance together. Once you do that, you could go ahead and finish off your seams. Now I'm going to finish off my seams individually instead of together. You can finish them off together and then press them to one side if you choose. For me, I think I might just go ahead and just finish it off in one seam instead of separately, and then just press it to one side. Go ahead and do all of that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and I stay stitched the front, so let me show you that. So I went ahead and stay stitched the front around the neck edge, and then I went ahead and stay stitched the back before I stitched the center back seams. Okay, so I stitched the center back seam, pressed it to one side, and then top stitch. That's what you see here, top stitch right here to keep it from flopping all around and all that good stuff. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and attach right sides together and attach my front to my back at the shoulder seam. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 1, and with right sides together, I'm going to attach at the shoulder seams. So I have that one over here and this one over here. Now, one thing I want to mention about this jacket while I'm pinning is this jacket is meant to be kind of like oversized. So don't think that it's just too big, you didn't cut the right side, but it's meant to be oversized. Two things I will mention is make sure that you have the right bust sides and the hip sides, okay? Because listen, you could literally cut, my size is size 16 and it's still gonna be oversized, but it still look that's out right now. But go ahead and make sure you pin at that notch, pin at the end, and then you're gonna pin at the other end as well, and then pin all the way across. So go ahead and pin all the way across your shoulders now. Now that I have the shoulders pinned all the way across, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, go ahead and sew your shoulder seam on both sides, and then finish off your seam allowance, press it to the back of your garment, and then what I'm gonna do is go ahead and top stitch exactly like I did for the center back. Go ahead and do that now. Now this is going to complete day number 1. I'll continue tomorrow with day number 2. All right, so welcome to day number 2. We are gonna start off at the shoulder seams. So now that I have my shoulder seams done, I'm gonna move this off to the side real quick. Now, once again, welcome to day number 2. Today is, the date is June 28th, and I have to have this done to show you guys by next Saturday, which is the 6th, okay? So it's going with the dress that you're gonna be seeing as well. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is the sleeves. But before we do the sleeves, I want to show you 2 things that you can do to make this kimono / jacket elevated. So the first thing I wanna tell you is get you a deep pocket pattern. Now, this is the Mimi G Diana dress that I purchased many moons ago. If you are a part of Sew It Academy, I believe this is course number 19 in the Sew It Academy. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it up on the screen. I'm gonna also put a link to this dress in the description box below. It's Mimi G, the Diana dress, course number 19 in the Sew It Academy. If you do not have the Sew It Academy, then you are able to purchase it. I believe you're still able to purchase it on Mimi G's website. I'll link to it in the description box below, put it up here on the screen so you're able to see it. So what I did was I went ahead and cut 4 pockets to put on the side of my jacket because I'm gonna need some pockets to throw my hands in, throw my keys in, throw my phone in. If you know, you know, right? All right, so that's one hack that I'm going to do because this is the pattern hackathon. Why not? The next thing I'm gonna do, I want to add a belt. So what I'm gonna do is first take a sheet of paper. Well, first, before I take a paper, if you have this pattern, go run and get it out of your stash. It's Butterick 6720. Now you guys know I did a complete sew along for Butterick 6720. So I'm just gonna use something that I just did, and I know there was a belt to it. So I pulled it back out. The only thing I did was took pattern piece number 9, which is the belt. And what I'm going to do is first measure it. I measured it, but I'm gonna measure it on camera for you so you're able to see that. So I'm gonna measure from, this is actually the center back seam. So I'm gonna measure from the center back seam to basically where a straight line is. So I'm gonna grab my ruler. Now I'm just gonna use this one because this is the first one that I seen. And I'm gonna make a straight line, okay? Now I'm gonna definitely tell you to do this in a pencil instead of a pen, but I'm using a pen only so you can see it. But let me put this piece of paper underneath it so you're able to see it. So you're able to see that line that I made with my pen, all right? Now, what I'm gonna do is measure from the center back to that line. So just take your tape measure, move that out of the way for me right quick. And I'm just gonna measure from the center back all the way down to that line. And for me, it's roughly about 27 3/4. So on my paper, I'm gonna write 27 3/4. Now, what I want you to do is wrap the tape measure around your waist where you would normally wear your belt, okay? So you're not gonna be able to see this on camera, but I already know. And what you want is to wrap it around as if you're wearing a belt, make a knot, tie it, whatever. And then you want to see where the ends are going to line up at. Now, me personally, I want 60 inches. So when I tie it, so I'm just gonna show you essentially, I'm gonna actually show you. I'm gonna actually put a clip here so you're able to see that. But what you need to do is wrap it around your waist and then leave some of that extension as well, all right? And it'll show how long you need to make your belt, including seam allowance, all right? So this is 37 1/4. Now I said I want 60, okay? So you're going to cut 4 total, but 2 will be used for the facing, 2 will be used as the belt. So 27 3/4 times 2, I'm gonna get my calculator. So 27.75 times 2 is 55.5. So 55.5. I want 60 to 61. So with that being said, I'm just gonna say 60.5 to make it easy, minus 55.5, which means I need to enlarge by 5.5 inches, okay? Now, we need to cut 2 of these, so I need to take that, divide it by 2 because I'm gonna have 2 for the belt and then 2 for the facing, okay? So I'm gonna take 4.5, divided by 2, and that gives me 2.25, or 2 1/4. So what that means is I need to take my belt and go up 2 1/4 inch. So let me grab some tape. And what I'm going to do is tape this down. I'm just going to enlarge it by 2 1/4. So I'm just going to take my ruler and go up 2 1/4. Now, if you're wondering why I like stopped at the 2 and went down, it's simply because this part right here is a little bent, so I wanted to make a straight line. But if I measure it out 2 1/4, just like this, it'll be correct. And I could just close it off, okay? So now I'm gonna close up this line across and cut it out. However, I'm gonna make sure I transfer my notch in the center, and then I'm gonna cut that piece out, that extension. Now that I have this cut out, I'm just gonna make a note and put added 2.25 inches times 2 equals 4.5 inches total. Okay? Now I'm gonna cut this out of fabric. Make sure you cut 4 out of fabric and interface 2. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the belt cut out, go ahead and move it off to the side. But before we do that, one thing I forgot to mention, and like I said, I'm gonna put it up on the screen on the dimension. Now from top to bottom, I'm gonna tell you how wide it is. So you want to make, like I was mentioning, make a line straight across at 27 3/4, and then create your angle for the end of the, if you want that angled there, you need to make that at 4 3/4. Now, in terms of the height, it's up to you, but the height is 3 1/2, okay? So 27 3/4 by 3 1/2 inches high, all right? And then if you need to add any, you know, an extension like I'm doing to make it a little bit longer, you do the same thing as well, all right? So move your belt off to the side. Do not forget to interface 2 of them, okay? We're gonna need that here in a minute, all right? So go ahead and grab your coat so we could go ahead and start pinning on our pockets now. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so go ahead and grab your jacket or coat or whatever. And now, before we add on our pockets, the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and start constructing our sleeves, okay? So, now I already have one sleeve on. I have not done the side seams yet, but one sleeve is on. I did that just to kind of show you. So we're gonna do the other side, all right? So I'm gonna move this off to the side real quick. Grab pattern piece number 5, your sleeve. And what we're going to do is we're gonna go ahead and hem the bottom first. Now the hem allowance is 1 1/4. So according to the instructions, what they want you to do is press up 1/4 of an inch and then press up 1 inch, okay? So you're gonna go to your sewing machine, not sewing machine, your pressing station, whatever. Press in 1/4 of an inch first and then press up 1 inch, okay? Use your seam gauge or whatever you need to do. And then on the right side, you're gonna go ahead and stitch it in place, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and pressed up the hem of the sleeves, it's looking really good. This is the right side, this is the wrong side. That's why I have the wrong side marked. Now go ahead and grab the jacket, and you want to put it in the armhole area of the seam that doesn't have a sleeve, of course. So what I have on the table, so right here is my front, this side is my back. There's a single notch in the front, double notch in the back. So what you want to do is, with right sides together, you want to make sure your single notches are matching up, and then you're going to pin there. Make sure you go to the other side and match up the double notches and pin there as well. And now you're just going to pin along the armhole area for your sleeve. So go ahead and pin all the way across now. All right, so now that I have my sleeve pinned into my armscye, our armhole area, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then finish off the seam allowance. Go ahead and do that, and then you're gonna press your seam allowance up towards the, instead of down towards the sleeve, you're gonna press it up, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and top stitch. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the sleeve done, what I did was I went ahead and attached it. I pressed the seam allowance up towards the jacket instead of down towards the sleeve, and then I just top stitched to keep that seam allowance in place. Now I top stitch at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, all right? So the next thing we're gonna do is our side seams, but before we do our side seams, we're gonna put some pockets in here. Now, if you do not want pockets, that is completely fine, but what I want you to do is turn, if you want the pockets, go ahead and listen up. If you do not want the pockets, go ahead and sew your side seam, or you could just pause right here for just a second while I do the pockets, and then we could, you know, start with me again when we start doing the side seams, okay? So what I'm gonna do, you have a notch right there. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my pockets, and I'm gonna only have 2. So with right sides together, I'm going to take the notch, where that notch is, and I'm going to pin right there at that notch. I'm hoping you're able to see it. Let me scoot it over so you are able to see that. Actually, I'm just gonna turn it so you can see it better. So let me turn this to where you could see the pocket. Okay. Where that notch is, I'm gonna make sure that my pocket is pinned there. So I'm gonna pin at the notch, and then I'm gonna pin at the top, pin at the bottom, and then I'm just gonna put like 1 or 2 more pins in between, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is go to the sewing machine, and using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Make sure you're using a regular length stitch. And then after I sew this in place, I'm gonna go ahead and finish the side seam off 1 inch above and 1 inch below. I'm gonna do that to both back pattern pieces and both front pieces. Go ahead and do that now, and then we'll attach right sides together and attach and finish off our pockets. Go ahead and do the first part of just sewing 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down and finishing off your seam allowance now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the pockets done on the back, on both backs, now what I'm going to do are the pockets on the front. And the only reason why I'm showing you this is because this is, I know I have individuals who are new to my channel, so I want to provide this, but moving forward, I won't show you how to do pockets because we have done this many of times on the channel, okay? So on the front, if you look at your front pattern piece, this is the big front area, this is the side, you have a notch there. So grab the other 2 pocket pattern pieces, and then with right sides together, you're going to pin and do the exact same thing that you did to the back. So you're gonna pin at that notch, and then pin along the side seam for the pocket, okay? So go ahead and finish pinning. And now that I have it pinned using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, finish off your seam allowance with your serger, pinking sure however you're finishing off your seam allowance. And then what you're gonna do is press the seam allowance towards the pocket and then understitch. Understitch is done at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So you're gonna press your seam allowance towards your pocket, and then on the pocket, you're going to stitch at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the pocket, not on your jacket, all right? So go ahead and do that now, and then we'll attach our pocket and make it an actual pocket. Let's go ahead and finish up our pocket now. All right, so now that I have the pocket sewn onto the front and the back, now what we're gonna do is with right sides together, we're going to attach our side seam. So I'm gonna turn it to the side so you're able to see that. And I'm gonna put my front, because I went ahead and understitched my front pocket. I'm gonna put right sides together on the pocket pieces and definitely pin my side seam. Make sure that you have your sleeve with right sides together. Make sure you are matching up the hem area and definitely pin at this notch right here. I'm going to pin at my hem. Then I'm just going to pin the length of my sleeves for right now. Make sure that your seam allowance are matching up right here. Make sure you put a pin there as well. And your seam allowance should be up towards your jacket instead of down towards your sleeves. Now what I'm going to do is pin the side seams, and you want to make sure that your pockets are right on top of each other. It matches up. All right. And then what I'm going to do is pin my side seam all the way down to the hem. So go ahead and pin your side seam in your pockets now. All right, so now that I have the side seam pinned, go ahead and grab your ruler. And what you want to do is, because it doesn't have any dots to tell you where to stop for your pockets, I'm gonna go from the bottom of this pocket and I'm gonna go up about 1 inch, which is where this pin is, and put a dot. And then I'm gonna do the same thing from the top of the pocket and go down and put a dot there. So what that means is basically where I'm going to stop at for when I start doing my pocket. So what I'm going to do is, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, I'm going to start at the hem, back stitch at the hem, so all the way up to this dot, back stitch at this dot. Then start at this dot, back stitch at the dot, so all the way down to the sleeves, and back stitch at the sleeves. Once I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and finish and sew my pocket around my pocket. And then after I do that, I'm gonna clip about 1 inch above and 1 inch below. Finish off my seam allowance from my hem all the way down to that clip. And then from the clip, 1 inch underneath my pocket all the way down to the hem. Once I finish that area off, then I'm gonna go ahead and finish off my pockets. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my side seams done, this is what it looks like. The pocket is finished. We have a nice, gorgeous pocket. It's looking good. It is more than 80% done. So the next thing we're gonna do is work on our band. So go ahead and move your kimono jacket out of the way. Grab pattern piece number 3, which are your front, and pattern piece number 4, which is your back band. So your front band and your back band. And you should have 2 that are interfaced and 2 that are not interfaced. So what you want to do is grab your back band, and I'm gonna grab the one that's interfaced, but you're gonna do the same thing to your non-interface side. So grab your back band, and then what you wanna do is, with right sides together, you have a notch at the top. So make sure you are using the right side. Okay, so with right sides together, you want to pin. Now, one thing I want to mention is you have like a curve edge that's curving inward. That is your front. So you want to make sure you're not pinning it on the wrong side, all right? So you want to make sure that you are pinning, the notches are going to match up, and you pin the notches in place at the shoulder seams. So pin at the notch and pin across both shoulder seams. So go ahead and pin across both shoulder seams now. All right, so now that I have my shoulder seams pinned using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, sew across both shoulder seams. Once you sew across both shoulder seams, go ahead and press your seam allowance open. So that's what you're gonna do on the ones that are interfaced. Now grab the ones that are not interfaced, and you're going to do the exact same thing, okay? So I'm gonna grab that. And then, once again, now look how this is looking. You see this part that curves in? That is your front, not your back, okay? And then with right sides together. So this one goes this way, and then this one goes the opposite direction, okay? And then you're going to pin the same way. All right, so go ahead and pin this one across too and just do it both at the same time. Using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're gonna backstitch at the beginning and at the end and sew across both shoulder seams and press the seam allowance open. Go ahead and stitch both of your shoulder seams for your facing and your front band together now. All right, so now that I have my bands done, this is my band, and then I also did my band with the facing. This is like the facing band right here. Now on the one that's not interface, you needed to press a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the outer side where you have your notches, okay? So I went ahead and did that, but what we're gonna do is go ahead and attach our band to our coat. So what we're gonna do is with right sides together, okay, I'm gonna start at the center back because you have notches there. So what you wanna do is match up the notches. So this is the back, and what you wanna do is attach the back where you have those notches. You're gonna pin right there, and then we're going to match this notch up to that notch and pin. Then we're gonna pin at the shoulder seam on both sides. I'm gonna pin the shoulder seam on the other side and then pin along the front facing of your kimono jacket, okay? So let me put a pin there. Now, one thing I wanna mention is you may have some places where you're going to have to do a little bit of clipping to ease in that fullness. Make sure you do that. Do not skip out on clipping where you need to, all right? So front piece, so you have a notch right here. Make sure that notch matches up with the notch on the front right here. So I'm gonna make sure that that matches up very good right here and pin. I'm gonna do that on the other side and then pin all the way along the front band area, all right? So go ahead and finish pinning along the front now, and then after you pin using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm gonna start in the center, back stitch at the center, so all the way down to one side, come back to the back, starting at the back, and then go to the other side. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my band onto my kimono jacket, it's looking really, really good, if I do say so myself. I have my seam allowance pressed up towards the band. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead and attach our facing. So what you wanna do is, it's the one that's not interface, and what you wanna do is with right sides together, you're just basically going to pin all the way around, matching up the shoulder seams, the back, and the front. So just pin all the way around. Now I'm gonna pin this off camera, but you can definitely do this part. It's nothing hard about doing this part at all. So just make sure you match it all up. I'm just gonna show you this part and then I'm gonna do the rest off camera, okay? So I'm gonna pin right there. And then make sure that you pin the back. So I'm just gonna show you a little bit of the pinning and then I'm gonna sew off camera, all right? Now that I have the back pin, you're gonna pin the front the same way. Just like this, you're gonna pin all the way around the front on both sides. Now, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm gonna start in the back just like I did for the band. I'm gonna start in the back, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way down one side, back stitch at the end. Come back to the back, starting in the back stitch at the beginning, at the center back, and then sew to the other end, and then back stitch at the end. Once you do that, trim your seam allowance down, press your seam allowance towards your facing. Your facing is the one that's not interface. And then you're going to understitch, okay? Understitch is done at 1/4 of an inch. So press your seam allowance to the facing, and then you're gonna stitch on the facing 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now, I may show you guys this so you guys do not get confused on how to understitch, all right? So first, what I want you to do is go ahead and attach your facing onto your band now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my band facing, which is this right here, and then this is my band. So when you look at it, this is the portion that's not interface. This is the portion that is interface. The seam allowance is pressed towards the facing, okay? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to stitch on the facing. This is the portion that is not interface, okay? And what you're going to do, now I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot. I'm going to keep the seam allowance or seam right here and use the presser foot to understitch. Understitch is done normally at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So all of my seam allowance is pressed towards the facing. So that's why you see that the seam allowance is pressed towards the facing here, okay? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to back stitch using a regular length stitch. I'm going to back stitch. I'm just going to sew all the way around as far as I possibly can, understitching on the facing, okay? So that's what understitching is. Once again, make sure that you understitch all the way around on your facing piece and not your band, all right? So go ahead and finish understitching all the way around. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I'm back from the sewing machine and I have my facing understitched all the way along the front portion of my kimono jacket. Now what you're going to do, you're going to press this in, okay? So I'm going to turn it to the right side on the inside, okay? So you're going to press your facing all the way around and press it in. And when you press it in, this press edge should go about 1/8 of an inch over that seam allowance that you have at your neck. And then you're just going to pin all the way around. Now I'm going to pin on the inside, and the reason why is because I'm going to baste it all the way around on the wrong side and then top stitch on the right side. So this is what it's going to look like for me. So I'm just going to kind of show you just pinning it. So I'm going to pin this all the way around on the inside. So go ahead and pin on the inside if you want to do this. Now, if you don't, you could pin on the right side and then top stitch it on the right side. But I like to make sure that I have my, it's cased very good and it's not going to lift up and all that good stuff. So I want to do it this way instead of pinning on the right side, okay? But do whatever floats your boat and works for you, all right? So go ahead and pin your facing to the, or pin your facing to, press it to the inside, and then slip stitch all the way along the front bands now. All right, so now that I have one side pinned, I'm gonna go ahead and baste all the way around this side, and then I'm gonna baste the other side. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch all the way around my front band. After I top stitch and get it in press, get it in place and press, the only thing that's left for you to do is go ahead and press up your hem. Now, instead of doing this part, what you want to do is press up your, before you attach this bottom on both sides in the front, you want to press in 1/4 of an inch and then press up 1 inch before you encase that, okay? And really it's supposed to be encased like this, okay? So it doesn't tell you to do this, but what I'm gonna tell you to do is go ahead and do this. You have a dot right here. I'm gonna pin right here. This is not in the instructions, but you wanna finish off the bottom. And then I'm just gonna go from this dot, which is probably a good 1/2 inch. I'm gonna go from this dot, so all the way across, okay? And then when I press it up, it gives me a good finish, okay? So I'm gonna show you that now on camera, and then you're gonna finish off your hem and then stitch it in place, and then you're all done. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like. So I'm just gonna stitch from this dot all the way across now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and sewn across right here, I'm gonna go ahead and trim it down. So I'm just going to trim it down right here. So I'm just going to leave a little clip right there and then just trim this down about right there. All right. And then what I'm going to do is turn it right side out. Use my point turner, poke out the corner, but do not push too hard so you don't rip it. Then what you want to do is I created a 5/8 inch seam allowance and basting stitch, and then I'm just going to stitch this in place right here to where it's a nice clean finish right here. Okay, and I'm just going to pin. All right, so that's what you're going to be doing. Once you do all of that, you are completely done with your kimono jacket. All right, so go ahead and grab your ties, which was the Butterick pattern. And what we're gonna do is with right sides together, because this is the last step you need to do. So let me grab my pins. And we're gonna pin at that notch. And make sure you put some interfacing on two. So I have right sides together on my two interface. You're gonna do the same thing to the ones that are not interfaced. And then using 5/8 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Sew across your ties and then press it open. Go ahead and do that now. Now that I have my tie belt sewn right sides together, I pressed the seam allowance open. I did the same thing on the facing piece. So now with right sides together, you're gonna pin at the center back. Just make sure you pin there. I'm also going to leave about an inch, I'm gonna say about 2-inch opening in the center back. So I'm just going to make sure I'm gonna mark my dots. Okay, so I'm gonna leave about a 2-inch opening. I'm gonna make a dot there and make a dot about right here. And I'm gonna leave that open so I'm able to turn it right side out, okay? So I'm gonna put a pin there. And I'm gonna put a pin here. So I think that's a big enough gap to turn my belt right side out. So all I'm gonna do is pin all the way down one end, around the curve, and then back up the other end, all right? So go ahead and pin your ties together, sew it together using, now I believe the instructions is 5/8 inch seam allowance. That's what I'm gonna be sewing mine at. And then flip it right side out and then give it a good press and close out this edge. Make sure you don't forget to trim it down, all right? If you need to know how to do the tie belt, I'm gonna drop the link to Butterick 6720 in the description box below, so you have that link in order to do the belt, all right? So that's it for this sew along. I hope you enjoyed. Go ahead and take some photos, let me see. Tag me on both Instagram and on YouTube so I could see all of your creations at Rochelle.Handmade.Designs. So I'll catch you in the next sew along, and also follow all the ladies that are part of the Pattern Hackathon. Also, if you are part of the Hackathon and you are going to be doing something for the Pattern Hackathon, no matter how easy your hack is, make sure you tag Kris from Unsocial, which her handle is in the description box below, here on YouTube as well as on Instagram, and use the hashtag Pattern Hackathon 2024. So I'll catch you in the next video. Until next time, keep sewing. All right, so there you have it. That is the complete sew along. I hope you enjoyed this video. If this video was educational, inspiring, and fun, please do not forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, also smash that notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. Oh, wait, hold on one second. So make sure you hit up the host, which is Kris from Unsocial, to thank her for creating an event like this and a challenge like this. You guys, go ahead and show her some love. All right, that's it for this video. Until next time, keep sewing.
Yeah. story to tell. I know they want me to fail. If they throw me into a cell, I know wifey, she paying the bill. Cause I can afford to be quiet. My city is dying and children are crying. Be alert, not devour. The enemy's prowling you just like a lion. But we got the keys, I promise you. Hold on to the peace inside of you. No, I'm not alone. You're not alone. You got an army who follows you. It's time to rise up, lift your eyes up. Yeah, hope is on the way. And we gon' be the change. Cause we are unrestrained. Yeah.
I'm not alone. I'm never alone. My family is with me. Wherever I go, let's be the change that we wanna see. We're taking a stand for what we believe.
Yeah, when I'm in doubt, I'ma pray it out. Believe in that name, so I say it loud. School system wanna take it out. Then wonder why no one behaving now. These are days for my generation. Feel like we living in revelation. We gotta share it, that's salvation. A world with no savior, devastation. What is a voice if you never use it? Never use it. Don't abuse it. I am not writing for your amusement. Deeper than rap, this is more than music. I know what teens who keep cutting their wrists. How can I flee when I'm taking a risk? If we ever gonna deal with it, gotta stop pretending and be real with it. And be real with it. It's time to unite, yeah, hey, it's time to unite. This world is so dark, together we shine like 4th of July. Hey, if you stand for nothing, then you'll fall for anything. We will not fall by any means. I promise you, put that on everything.
I'm not alone, I'm never alone. My family is with me. Wherever I go, let's be the change that we wanna see.